I don't know about you, but preparing for a conference is always super intense. Then comes the actual conference, and that's the fun part. But before that, we have to put a lot of work into it. So in this video, I want to teach you how you can prepare the presentation for your conference so that you can fully enjoy your experience and deliver a great talk. We will cover all the steps from capturing introductory slides to presenting your results and ending your presentation strong, and finally answering the scared questions. A lot of people are scared of the questions at the end of the conference, how to prepare for that as well. So stay tuned. Before we start, I quickly want to introduce myself. If you don't know me yet, hi, I'm Ainur. I'm a third-year PhD student at Imperial College London, and I made it my mission to teach you every secret I know in academia, video by video, through all my social media channels. Without further ado, let's dive right into the video. The first step that we're going to cover is what you're going to do before you start putting together your conference slides. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to check the presentation requirements. So the conference I attended last year, the APS-DFD conference in the US, there the requirement was that the talk is 10 minutes and the questions are 2 minutes. There is a rule of thumb that is 1 slide per minute talk. So 1 to 2, like maximum 2 slides per minute that you're talking. And this is a great rule of thumb because then I know, okay, in total, I need maximum 10 to 15 slides for this 10-minute presentation. If I have more than that, not good, because that means that I'm basically racing through the slides and people cannot follow up with my talk at all. So that's the first thing. Then you know, okay, the total number of slides that you're going to have. Check the time. After that, you're going to think about 1 to 2 core messages that you want to convey through that presentation. So I bring this example all the time through all my videos now. Let's again stick to the example of polar bears. If you do research on polar bears and you want to present, because polar bears have like this dark skin below their white fur, right? And you want to explain how this dark skin makes polar bears feel warm. And that's your main message. You want to tell people dark skin of polar bears helps them keep warm in the Arctic weather. Then you're going to write that down. And whatever your research is about, find this core message. What is one thing that you want your audience to get, to pull out from this presentation? Because that's going to be basically the core of your presentation, the leading string of your presentation. So once you figure that out, how many slides you're going to do in total and what your main message is, then and only then we're going to start crafting the presentation. So let's move on to step number 2, your introductory slides. Now this is very important because these introductory slides are there to tune your audience, to bring them on board with your research. Now it depends on the conference that you are, that you have to prepare different introductory slides. So for example, I went to a fluid mechanics conference last year, and I know that the entire audience knows about fluid mechanics, but it was a huge conference. It covered all areas of fluid mechanics, right? So I know that even though everybody knows the basics of fluid mechanics, they're not that familiar with the very specific problem that I'm doing. So I know the audience I'm presenting knows the basics about fluid mechanics, but does not know exactly what I'm doing. So what I did is I presented my problem and I said, okay, this is useful for this and that application, and this is why we're doing research on it. So point 1, I showed them, okay, why is my research important? Okay, why am I even doing this research? That was my first slide. And the second slide was I pointed out the research gap in what I'm doing. I said, okay, like previous researchers, they did lots of work on this and that, but still we don't know this missing information to achieve the goal that I showed you in the beginning. To have this impact, we need to fill this gap. Right? And now depending on what your audience is, you have to like use different words and make sure that they understand what you're talking about. That's very important. So 1 or 2 introductory slides, this makes up maybe 10% of your entire presentation. So once that is done, we're going to move to the next part of your presentation. So number 3. Introduce your research methods. Again, only 1 to 2 slides, or depending on, this is maybe 20%, you can put a bit more effort into it, like a bit longer than your introductory slides. Maybe 20% of your entire presentation is going to be about your method. So people want to know, if you're an experimentalist, what was your setup? How did you get the data that you have? If you do machine learning, they want to know which machine learning model did you use? How does this model work? If you do computational research, they want to know which software did you use? What did you tune in that software? What was your build-up, your setup. How did you collect your data, right? So invest like 20% of your presentation on that. Just walk them quickly through your setup and how you got the data that you have. This is super important. And also quite easy to put together because that's what you do every single day, right? Now, we're gonna go to the core of your presentation. Step number 4 is basically your research results. Now, your research results make up half of your presentation. It's the biggest bulk. That's the work that you do, and that's what you want to talk about, and that's what you want to present on that conference. So you're going to think back about your main message that you put down in the first step, the main core message that you wanted people to understand from this. And this is going to be your guiding line now, because now you're going to present your results in a way that everything leads to that one conclusion. So if it's the black skin of polar bears and how the black skin insulates them and keeps them warm, then you're going to use all the data that you've gathered on that topic, and you're going to layer it, show one data on one slide and then the next graph on the next slide, and you're going to put that together so that in the end you can say, if we look at all this, it all points out to one thing, that the black skin of polar bears keeps them warm in winter. Okay, so that's on you now. You have to pick the right graphs and figures for that. So that's 50% of your presentation. And now when that is done, people are like, whoa, that's a lot, you know, because like scientific conferences, it's a lot for the brain to keep up and understand. So now you want to help people to remember the main points that you did, which leads us to step number 5, which is going to be to summarize the key points of your presentation. So it's going to be just one slide, short and crisp, the main points that you made in this presentation. Give it a quick summary, and that's it, so that people remember and it keeps in their brain, okay, like this was what this presentation was about. And then finally, your last slide, that's going to be point number 6 now that you have to do, and this is an outlook. It's a nice presentation where you just say, okay, this is where we are right now with our research, and the next step for the research are this and that. And this is kind of a cliffhanger where you say, okay, stay tuned. Next year I'm going to present again, and then you will see a result to this and this project. So stay tuned for my research. And this section is, again, just 10% of your entire presentation, one slide, maybe 2 if you do something super exciting, but really it's not the bulk of it. Okay, so that's basically it. So summing it up, we did step number 1, prepare for your presentation. Think about how many slides you need. 1 to 2 minutes per slide is the rule of thumb. Step number 2 is to think about your core main messages that you want to convey. Then you're going to prepare introductory slides, 10% of your presentation. Then you're going to prepare your methods, 20% of your presentation, your results, 50% of your presentation, the summary, 10% of your presentation, and the outlook, again, 10% of your presentation. Now, a lot of people fear the part that comes next, the questions part, right? Because in every conference there's a dedicated time slot where the audience can ask you questions. And it never happened to me, but I know that sometimes it happens that there are some professors, some mean professors in the group who really want to roast that person that's up there, and they ask like super hard questions, meaning like with the whole purpose to roast you and embarrass you, but that really happens very, very seldom. Most of the time that's not the case. And actually, most of the time, it's a compliment when people ask you questions. Because scientists in general are not good presenters. Like from my experience, what I've seen on conferences, we are great in doing science and all that. But when it comes to conveying what we did, and like communicating it with others, there is a lag there. So what happens is that people usually don't understand what you're presenting, and then they don't ask questions. Right? So if nobody asks a question, that's not a good sign. But if people raise their hands in the audience, this actually means they've listened to you, they understood what you presented, and they're interested in more details about your research. So it's a huge, huge compliment when people ask questions in conferences, right? And usually, like from my experience, when people ask me questions about my research, so far they've all been very kind, and they've been in the scope of what I know. Right? And even if it weren't in the scope of what I know, keep calm and just communicate it. Say, hey, I haven't looked into that. I don't know, but I will have a look at it and I will inform myself. I don't know the answer to your question. Super easy. So keep that in mind. Questions are compliments. And with that, I basically covered all the steps that you need to prepare your conference slides. I hope this is helpful for you. Hang in there. It's a great experience once you got the preparation done. Enjoy your stay at a conference. Use it for networking and just immersing yourself in the field of research that you're doing. Before I end this video, I want to point out my Instagram channel where I share daily tips for life in academia, and you can check it out by scanning this QR code here. And also, this YouTube channel is quite new, it's quite small, so every like, every comment means a lot. Make sure to leave some love, subscribe to this channel so that I can produce better quality videos for you. Wherever you are, keep safe, and I see you in the next video. Bye bye!